attention. Remember that report which made the round some years ago about the plan to merge so many government agencies? Finally put through. The EFCC, the ICPC, the FEC approved that merger not long ago, and some other agencies. So that will be the central focus of this segment, as we're joined now by Ivie Richards, who is an anti-corruption crusader or consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of the Corruption Observatory, actually. Yeah. But if you look at the merger, as has been approved by the FEC of EFCC and ICPC, received with mixed feelings by Nigerians, and some even, we don't even bat an eyelid about it. But with respect to fighting corruption, how would you weigh this step?
Well, the ICPC came into force via an act in 2000. I think it's precisely June 2000. And if you look at that law, it was directed, primarily at the everyday occurrences, corruption issues in the public sector. Things like embezzlement, clientilism, bribery, issues like victimization and things like this. But Section 27 of that law says that the ICPC must receive a petition from the public before it can act. That same section, a subsection of that, also says that if someone who is an illiterate, for instance, want to volunteer information to the ICPC and cannot read and cannot write, you will use your own language orally. A staff of the ICPC takes down the information from you, and then you have to thumbprint. In other words, the ICPC cannot protect informants, and they cannot go seeking for information. But that's a far cry from the law setting up the EFCC. Section 38 and 39 of that law says that the EFCC can go seeking for information, all right, and they are not obliged to reveal their sources of information. In other words, they can protect their informants. And the assignment for the ICPC is a V. Of course, we don't need to dwell on that. The public sector is murky water. All right, so there's a lot of work for the ICPC to do. And then the EFCC law came into existence just barely 4 years after that, 2004. You begin to ask yourself, why did the EFCC law, now come into effect shortly after the ICPC, so? But again, the assignment for the EFCC is also a V. Because, you see, a lot of us don't know this, but the truth of the matter is that over 60-70% of all the monies found in the private sector in this country actually have their foundation in the public sector. And so the EFCC now will now come to look at how these monies change form. What we call money laundering. How is it changing form? How is it filtering out of the country? How is public sector money coming to become a car mart or become a cement company? Just in quotes. All right. So the assignment now for the EFCC is also a V. But government will need to cut costs, and I perfectly agree that government should cut costs, because truly there are some of these MDAs that are actually a duplication of efforts. But one of the greatest problems we have in this country today is the problem of corruption. And I think that every right-thinking government would want to strengthen those agencies like the ICPC, the EFCC, the CCB, for instance, so that the problem of corruption can be brought to a manageable level. If you look at the ICPC, it's assumed that, okay, the law setting it up assumes that a unit of it should be in every MDA. Okay, so, but those units are supposed to be bona fide staff of the ICPC. But that's not the case. What you have regular civil servants in all the MDAs, acting as ICPC staff.
Can they get cooperation?
And those people allegiance is to the minister, to the PAMSEC, to the DG, to the executive, as the case may be. And again, these committees are also an extension of the offices of the chief executives. The question I ask myself is, now, who is being policed? Is it the cleaner, or is it the clerk, or is it the man whose signature can actually make public sector fund change form and become private sector fund? In other words, where the work of the ICPC stops, that of the EFCC starts. And I think that there is no reason at all to match this. In fact, the issue of corruption and the issue of, murky value system in the country have become so endemic that an agency like the NOA, for instance, should be split into two. You should have an agency handling mass mobilization of the people. You have another one handling value reform. Government cannot, claim to be costing cost and then begin to tamper with issues like this. If they want to cut costs, my view is that if you look at representation in the Senate, in the House of Rep, the states assemblies, and then the local government councillors, I have been of the view, for a very long time, that we don't need more than 36 senators in this country. We don't need more than 74 members of House of Rep.
So we should do it with the bicameral
Exactly.
system.
That way, a lot of confusion will be stopped. Laws will be made faster. Credible people will be found at the center of government. And then this trend of the top driving the bottom will be reversed, because the bottom actually ought to drive the top.
Isn't there a chance that with this merger of the EFCC and ICPC, they will not just cut costs, but strengthen the performance of the anti-corruption agency?
Well, the two laws are not entirely the same.
They have to amend.
So the expectation is that if they are merged, then a new law will have to emerge. If a new law emerges, perhaps the name might also change. The operators might also change. But if that becomes the case, then perhaps it might even be costing more money than having the duo of the ICPC and the EFCC in place.
But how do you deal with this one? Because if you ask most people out there, I mean, you've been in the Corruption Observatory for a while, and you ask them, what specific case really comes to your mind about either the EFCC or the ICPC about fighting corruption? What will people say? Many times, they'll struggle to remember anything. Remember that accusation against the EFCC that it was basically a witch hunting political tool. If somebody falls out with someone somewhere, the next thing, EFCC is on his tail. And then they ask you, how many major prosecutions have they even gotten after all? And so this question keeps going back and forth. Look at the former governors. How many have been prosecuted by the EFCC in spite of the huge files we were told was in the possession of the commission?
Well, my response to that is very simple. We are all coming from the same pool of public awareness and value system. The president cannot give what he does not have because he's a Nigerian. And that's not to say that Nigerians are bad people. But certainly it's going to take some time and deliberate effort to change the value system. The man in the AFCC is a Nigerian. All right, so he's coming from the same value system, the same public awareness pool. So he will not be able to give what he does not have. But I want to repeat, and very seriously at that people should put in more effort, there should be this deliberate effort to put our head above water. What you are talking about now strikes at the very heart of the law setting of the EFCC. Okay, if the man says no, and it's at the beck and call of the executive, what will happen? He might be changed. So again, there's also the need for diplomacy between the operators of the EFCC and
he's
the executive.
Still a 7 security official.
Sorry?
The man heading the EFCC.
Yes.
Still a 7 security official.
Exactly.
So he still has to go back, and perhaps if he wants to continue with his career,
exactly,
he has to be promoted.
exactly.
So.
Look at the case of Eribadu, and what happened thereafter. But I think that as a nation, we are not really, really serious. I'm sorry, but I'm a Nigerian. We are not serious. We are not serious as a nation. Because these issues are very glaring. They are very... Now, the EFCC is not supposed to sit down or just go... The EFCC can act on news that are written on the pages of newspaper, is watching me live now. If I say something that is striking, they can go investigating it. Because that's the spirit of the Lord that set them up. Now, imagine a country of a little less than 200 million people. The economy is yearning for infrastructure, and you have about 2 or 2.5 companies producing cement to satisfy the entire market. How about sugar? These are the issues for the EFCC to look at: financial and economic crimes. Why is it so? Is somebody somewhere teleguiding government policies to suit a particular segment of business or not? It's a whole lot of work. All right, but they just sit down there and it's not supposed to be like this. The Spirit says, go find out why the economy is not moving. Take a look at the liquidity awash in the financial industry, and then the scenario of the real sector, who should own this money, the manufacturing sector, drying up. Instantly you begin to know that, look, these things are not working out.
So
right.
if I get you correctly, Mr. Richards, you're not in support of the merger?
Well, anything that can be done to strengthen agencies that would drive anti-corruption in the country should be done by the government. At the same time, I'm in support of government saving costs. All right? Because we want to see a situation where there should be a minimum of 60-40 capital recurrent expenditure. But I'm saying that the better way to go at this is to look at issues where leakages and confusion comes up. And straight ahead, I'm pointing my finger at the House of Representatives. You have 310 members there. Do you know the enormity? It's about 30-35% of the national budget that goes into recurrent expenditure.
But perhaps,
and that's fair.
Maybe before the executive begins to propose other things, they will have to look inwards, and maybe this is an attempt to look inwards to see, where we also overshooting ourselves, where we are shooting ourselves in the foot. Let us see if we can streamline our activities and be more efficient in terms of how we deliver service. Some people have also questioned why the EFCC had to be founded in the very first instance, and why wouldn't we boost funding for the Nigeria Police, especially the Special Fraud Unit, which is supposed to be handling these crimes of economic and financial crimes. So, that particular controversy, do you think that if the police as an institution had been strengthened, these arms would have been so strong that they would virtually be doing what the EFCC is doing?
Well, there is nothing really wrong in isolating some departments and making them quasi units, for effectiveness and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. So, to that extent, there's nothing actually wrong with the EFCC standing alone outside the police force. Within the police force, too, it could also be effective. But I think that because you want to define some areas of criminality and to pursue it, there's a need to also carve out certain bodies that will pursue. The EFCC primarily is to look at issues of money laundering. All right, if I understand that law properly, how public sector money change form into private sector money, why the country's economy is not moving forward, who is doing what, who is going against the law. That's what the EFCC should be doing. Different from what the ICPC also will be doing, looking at issues of clientelism, those every common day, corruption issues in the public sector.
But if we look at the bureaucracy...
So if you now merge them, well, if you merge them, you're going to have a new body, which might be more effective. But the argument is you might not end up saving cost.
Why do you say so?
Because the truth of the matter is that the ICPC is grossly underfunded.
All right. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here today. We want to thank you for coming on. Ivie Richards is of the Corruption Observatory. We've been looking at the approval by the FEC to merge the EFCC and the ICPC and some other agencies. Well, that's it for this segment. Don't forget, we'll be back in just a moment to take a look at your response. So join us again if you can.